what we believe is that if you're going to create change within your supply chain, you need to start with knowledge. If people don't even understand their basic rights, how will you change behavior in that factory?
Right, this is Heja Framtiden, the Swedish podcast on the future. I'm sitting here in Stockholm with Jens Helmersson, founder of Quizzer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
What is Quizzer? Maybe is the best question to begin with. You've been around for 6 years, right?
We've been here for 6 years. We started with an ambition to train millions of workers on their rights, ensuring that workers producing goods for global brands also has their basic needs taken care of. And we train workers through digital tablets with films in local language with quiz questions afterwards. We can measure the results. And we share it with global brands to enable also that business helps to drive positive change.
So you're basically using gamification in social sustainability in the supply chain. Is that a way to describe it?
Yeah. I think, utilizing the benefits of gamification, like having a quiz game that makes it fun for workers to train. I think that's the key for us to ensuring that workers, when they start training, they often look up when they see our films and they say, is this the training? This looks like a soap opera. And then they get a quiz game afterwards. So it's supposed to be fun because it's easier to learn when you have fun.
And what are the kind of manufacturers that use your tools? Because it needs to be in their interest to engage the workers in the workers' rights. Are everyone interested in doing that?
Not everyone is interested in doing that, but I think if you can explain why this is important to global brands and why this can also be a benefit to suppliers by training workers, then I think it's easier for them to see that this is an opportunity. I think sometimes we come there with our demands and a lot of suppliers explain that they feel whipped into shape and they would rather have a carrot to work towards. So I think this is an opportunity for us to help them to train workers in a fun way, potentially also create better engagement within the factories. We're starting to see some fantastic results from the factories that we're collaborating with. And if you can then start to create engagement in the workplace, you will see better results, like both in production but turnover of staff. And if you can then, as a supplier, already see that I'm making more money by working with Quizzer than I'm paying, then it's an easy decision. And I think also utilizing their willingness to kind of be proactive and seeing that, I want to be a long-term supplier. I want to be able to show to global brands that I take responsibility and potentially maybe gain more business by doing so. Then it's a win-win-win.
I saw one video from a business case of yours was a sweatshirt manufacturer in China. And they had made a transition from a basic garment factory to high-tech production and more human-centric approach. And he claimed that the transparency was beneficial for everyone in the system. But that seems kind of a new way of looking at it. Or do you see that more manufacturers are actually starting to realize the benefits?
I think there are suppliers in China today that just need to take care of these things. I think the demands on suppliers are increasing. There's a lot of production that maybe used to be in China that was lower price that is moving to other countries. So I think a lot of the suppliers who are there, they still see that if I'm supposed to develop myself into a supplier that can remain long-term, I have to take this kind of responsibility. And I also see that other things are supporting us in our work, especially in China, where you have a one-child policy starting to give effect on the number of workers out there. there's a younger generation who is also saying that I'm not going to work for you the way my mother or father worked for you. So they demand more, and they want to be listened to, and they will switch workplace very rapidly if they don't feel like they're being seen. 8 out of 10 workers decide on the first day if they would work long term for the supplier or not. And if you're a supplier that starts the first day by saying that we will train you on your rights, we will also have a dialogue together to ensure that you feel motivated and seen in our workplace. We will train you on other things like how to become a better parent. Then you feel seen, and that's a big likeliness that you will stay longer.
And you are currently active in 4 markets or 5 markets?
4 markets. We're in China, we're in Bangladesh, we're in Thailand, and we also have a few suppliers in Mauritius.
And why are you limited to those markets?
It's more a matter of how quickly can we scale and create films for more markets. We are right now having the other co-founder, Sophie, she's in Cambodia to develop more content for Cambodia. So soon we will be in 5 markets. But it's time consuming to ensure that we have films for all the markets in local language. And we always make the films with local directors and actors to ensure that a worker, when they see our content, feels that this is respectful towards them and it's fantastic content because they can see it almost like they're watching TV.
Okay. And there are also, of course, a lot of cultural codes that needs to be addressed from a local perspective.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of trainings that take place that where you have cartoons, for example, or where you have other ways, which is a great way to scale it because you can easily just do voiceover and put text underneath. But it doesn't necessarily strike the chord with the worker in the same way as if you see a film that is in your local language with actors that could be you in a factory that could be yours. And so I think that is one of the key elements why we are successful with our trainings. So it's more a matter of ensuring that it's always tonality is correct, and that's why we use local directors and local actors. So I mean, a training for Quizzer in Bangladesh looks totally different compared to training for Quizzer in China. In Thailand, we had to ensure that all the migrant workers were also taken care of. So in Thailand, our trainings has both languages or films for the workers in Thailand, but also the workers coming from Cambodia and from Myanmar coming into Thailand and working in the industry.
So you needed more languages for the text?
Yeah, I think not only the text, we actually created films for all the different languages because it has to be respectful and the worker needs to feel like this is for them and made for them specifically. So if you're a worker from Myanmar working in Thailand, you can see the content in your language so that you feel like this is for me.
And how much will the actual content change over the markets?
It changes maybe to, except for tonality being totally different between different markets, I would say that maybe 25 to 30% needs to be adapted for local markets due to that the laws are different in different countries. And so I think, that needs to be taken into account. Sometimes we have a specific content that also needs to be developed, of course. So, I mean, we do certain trainings ourselves. We collaborate with other organizations to also develop content. We collaborate with CCR/CSR. I know that Ines Kempfer from CCR/CSR was here on the podcast a while back. So we have trainings from them also helping factories to see and how to motivate workers into becoming better migrant parents. We also collaborate with ETI on Modern Slavery Act in a solution called involuntary work for China. We have her project with her finance in Bangladesh where we collaborate to create films for them to be able to scale and measure their own progress.
Will the training be any different with regards to different industries? I mean, there might be a difference between manufacturing technology products or fashion products.
I think worker rights are the same in as long as you have an end product that you're producing, then I think that you're kind of touching on the same topics. So we have companies working with everything from food to non-food, plastics, batteries, technical products or IT products, fashion products. All of them have the same needs. If you are a worker working in a factory, you have the same rights. So I think that's a true benefit for us, that we're able to scale to a lot of different segments and a lot of different industries. If you work in specific heavy machinery, for example, then you will probably need additional content that we could potentially develop as well to ensure that workers are also, understanding their health and safety issues even more clearly, and occupational safety.
Can you guide us through what a training could look like?
Yeah. So when you're a worker, you start by grabbing a tablet, you start the training, you watch a film or you log in first to ensure that we can measure your progress. You start a film, you watch a film maybe for 5 minutes. After that, you will ask a few questions in a quiz game. And after you have completed the questions, that could be somewhere between 4 to 8 different questions depending on the topic. Then you move on to the next film, and then you have 3 to 4 different films per module. So first of all, you might be trained on system and documentation in a factory, for example, or what are you supposed to have if you start working in a factory? You're not supposed to leave your ID card. You're supposed to get a contract and a copy of that when you leave. You should be able to decide if you want to work overtime and other things like this that are more practical. Then you move into health and safety, understanding what is the purpose of protective equipment and why should you be using this. And so all of these things are kind of put into modules where you then tackle these issues one by one. On the first training that we have called Rights and Responsibilities, you go through 4 different modules: system documentation, health and safety, fire and building safety, and finally also touching upon workplace dialogue. You have a basic level for workers and a more advanced level for management, but we suggest that all train all levels, because if there is no hidden knowledge within a factory, it's much easier to also get understanding for each other and then also create better opportunities moving forward. So this is what we have in our Rights and Responsibility solution. And as a worker, it takes approximately 2 hours to go through all different modules in both levels. And this is one of the benefits that the supplier says. It goes quickly. It's cost and resource beneficial to them, and you can also measure all the progress. You can see how many you have trained in the factory, and you can also then afterwards share the results and showing the global buyers that I've been training my workers. They know what they're supposed to. We also have, before you start training, a baseline. So we test like 10 to 15% of the workers in the factory to see what is the level of knowledge before the training starts, and then we also do this after the training ends. So this is explaining one basic module, which is our Rights and Responsibility module, and then we have other modules on worker engagement. We have modules on wage management, involuntary work, migrant parenting, so her finance, as I mentioned before. So all of these kind of make up a landscape that should give the supplier an opportunity to really move from being a supplier that could be reactive to be proactive, and to be a supplier that could also be a long-term supplier to global brands that understands and sees the benefit also of being a supplier that takes responsibility and goes hand in hand with brands.
And it has to be beneficial for the supplier to actually show the workers that we're taking this seriously. I mean, a more shady company would not use this kind of tool, obviously.
No, I think it's a great way of evaluating also the willingness of suppliers to take this kind of responsibility. So we know that there are clients that has been working with us that has seen that factories do not care about training their workers, or do not take the responsibility that the brand needs them to. So it makes it easier for them also to choose what supplier to work long term with. But I also believe that suppliers, as they start to see more and more cases, that this is actually beneficial to them. We're starting to see that suppliers today are starting to realize that if I care more about my workers, there's a big likeliness that they will care more back. But this has not always been the case, and I think sometimes I still argue this towards suppliers, saying that, you know, if you show them that you care more about them and that you will help them to become, you know, skilled in their rights, in the responsibilities, that you will have a dialogue with them, do you think that maybe they will be more likely to perform better for you and to stay with you longer? And it's not always the case that the supplier agrees. So I think as we get these cases and as we share them more also with other suppliers, where suppliers can stand up in our kickoff meetings today, for example, and say that we were also skeptical. This is what has happened. I see a plus 3% increase of production output per capita after I started the trainings. I see lower turnover of staff in my factory compared to before. I think then we're tapping into, you know, the business aspect, which I do believe is one of the key elements in order to make this scale massively in the future and reach even more people, because the people running the factories are business women and businessmen. If they see a business opportunity in this, they will train their workers.
But are your clients always the brands, or can you have a direct dialogue with the factories as well?
Yeah, we normally go through brands because it helps us to, you know, push the solution out. We know that suppliers say that there will be two reasons why we will work with you. One is if I get more business from doing it. The second one is if the brand tells me to. And we do have suppliers already today coming to us and saying that I want to work with you. I know what you do. I know this will be a benefit to me. And I also want to be a supplier of the future. So if I can show my ambition on social sustainability, I know it will be beneficial to me long term. So they can choose to come on directly. So we have several suppliers coming directly to us and just saying that I don't need a brand to tell me. I will just join you and I'll pay for it myself. Normally, however, we do have we contact brands first, and then the brands will say yes. This is challenges that I do have. I don't have scalability. I don't know how to create massive scaling with all my suppliers on the topics that I feel are important. You have trainings that cover most of what I need, and you're also on the markets that constitutes maybe 50 to 60% of my supply chain. When this is the case, then they say, okay, fine, we'll sign a contract with you, we'll help you to push it out to our supply chain, and then we have meetings jointly, and often also invite suppliers to these meetings to share their own experience, and then we scale it out into the supply chains.
So how did all this start?
It started 6 years back. Due to that, me and Sophie, my co-founder, we had similar experiences, but from different perspectives. We were both living in Bangladesh at the same time. Sophie had been asked by H&M at that point to create films to help to scale to more suppliers the rights and responsibilities of workers and training men and women in factories about violence against women and other core topics that were really important to reach a lot of workers with. I was working for H&M as a business manager, taking care of all the like knits and heaven knits in Bangladesh, and it was my responsibility to drive the change into the supply chain. H&M started very early on by delegating the responsibility and saying that it will not be a separate issue to work with sustainability. It's part of the business. It should be owned by business managers. So it was really clear to me very early on that it's going to be my responsibility to pick the right suppliers and pick the suppliers that can also grow with us long term and be a good partner, both from a social compliance perspective, but also from a chemical and environmental perspective. So I met a lot of suppliers and said that we have these amazing films that can help you to scale trainings within your factory. And what happened at that time was that a lot of suppliers were just using PowerPoints or even flip charts to train workers on their rights. And we knew that this is not enough. And it's still being that way for a lot of suppliers still today, that it's old classroom style trainings and you don't get the needed results and ensuring the workers know their rights, and you don't have any way to measure it. But at least we had these amazing films, and we sat with suppliers and saying that we want you to train your entire workforce using these films, and you can scale it as much as possible, and we will give them to you, and they're yours to use. The suppliers said that we're not sure that this is a good idea. If we start to train our workers, there might be challenges, with riots and other issues happening. And this was, 12, 13, maybe 14 years ago. So it was fairly early on in the journey for sustainability. But the awesome thing was to see factories coming back after 3 to 6 months and saying it's actually the opposite happening. We start to see that when we care more about our workers, they care more about us. And they were claiming that they had lower turnover of staff. They were seeing, since they kept the good workers, they had better productivity, they had better quality. So all of these things that we expected to happen started to happen. And that's where kind of my mindset shifted from at that time, everybody was talking about sustainability as a cost. This is something that costs money and it's going to be expensive. You're going to take a lot of additional responsibility. But I started to realize at that time that this is just a business case. If you do this properly, then there is just a win-win-win scenario. Workers will be more satisfied. Suppliers will have better productivity and other things that drives their business. And the buyer will also have the same benefits of a sustainable supply chain. So this was an eye-opener for me. After this, I moved to Hong Kong and I worked there for a while. And when I moved back to Sweden, and after working for another company, Indiska, for a couple of years, I met with Sophie again. And my experience at Indiska also showed that the resources that H&M has, or big global brands or big Swedish brands like IKEA and others, this is not necessarily what medium-sized brands have. You have somebody who is responsible for this, but you have almost equally big supply chains, and you need to take a lot of responsibility. And it was just clear that there's a gap here where there's a need to take responsibility, but not the resources to kind of manage it. So when Sophie came to me and said, Jens, we should use your ability of understanding businesses, and we should use my ability of making fantastic films for workers, and we should combine it into a scalable and measurable IT solution so we can reach more and more workers. That's when we started to say, yeah, let's go. And that's 6 years ago today.
Because that's what I talked to Ines Kempfer about as well. Where does the responsibility end? From a brand perspective, and as you said, there can be one person assigned to take care of this CSR things and supply chain things, and it's a lot of pressure because once you start realizing how complex this supply chain can be and how far it can go, it's very difficult to be compliant with everything because you can't control every step down the line. Could your solution be helpful for these managers that are quite lonely in their tasks?
I think so, because I think resources is one challenge, and then supply chains can be quite diverse and quite big, and to kind of tackle all of this, you need to be able to have help in scaling your efforts out. If you do it one by one, or if you have a few people locally that tries to educate suppliers, it will take a long time. I think there are fantastic ways today, if you're just willing to spend the time and the energy to understand more about them, that can complement the way of doing audits that kind of just gives you a snapshot of where a factory stands today. There's a buzzword going around where everybody's talking about going beyond audit. Beyond audit, it just means that, okay, now we learn what the challenges are. How will we tackle them? How do we go beyond this system of just giving me snapshots year by year? And what we have seen is that audits has not necessarily always given the progress of factories. You could see that a factory is standing absolutely still through the audit system, and that they get the same kind of remarks year by year. So we need to be able to start to give suppliers more responsibility. And there's a lot of them standing there with their hands up saying that I'm ready to take more responsibility. Give me a chance to be proactive instead of reactive. What we believe is that if you're going to create change within your supply chain, you need to start with knowledge. If people don't even understand their basic rights, how will you change behavior in that factory? So you need to start at some point giving the necessary and relevant knowledge about what is demanded. After you have your basic knowledge in place, a kind of a platform built with everybody in the factory understanding what basic rights and responsibilities are, then you can start to have a dialogue about that. If you have a dialogue about that, then you can also start to talk about more complex issues, such as the wage issue, such as other important topics, and to give sustainability departments or supply chain managers this opportunity to have a solution that can easily be implemented, can easily be scaled, but also be measured. So you can sit anywhere. You can sit in Sweden and you can see that your suppliers are taking the responsibility you need them to. That's the kind of support that we want to give.
Do you touch upon topics like sexual harassment as well?
Yeah, we do it within the training solution, and I think that it's going to be a topic that we will probably also develop even more. There are still a lot of markets where this is unfortunately a massive case. So we're touching upon it in the rights and responsibility training. I think there will be more complementary trainings on that also as we move forward.
So in the pipeline is probably Cambodia. Do you have other markets that you're interested in?
Yeah, there are so many markets that we wish to go into. It's just a matter of resources and also, the time it takes to develop these markets. We're tremendously excited about going into Cambodia. We would want to go into Myanmar as well. We want to go into Vietnam. India is a massive market that we would love to tackle, but you also have to look at the challenges that each market presents. And for example, in India, we will probably need to make films in 6 to 9 different languages to be respectful to the workforce there as well. But there would be areas where there would be more production made, so we could probably start with 2 or 3 languages. But all of these markets are very exciting for us to move into in the coming 1 to 2 years.
Great. Thank you so much, Jens, for joining here from Framtiden.
Thank you.
Check out quizzer.se, Quizrr.se. Quizzer. Who do you think I should interview?
Well, I think there's a lot of different potential companies that you should look at. I always enjoy listening to people who can also give a more broad perspective. So to discuss with somebody who has an overview on the market would be really interesting. I think it would be great if you could interview a brand and see their aspects on sustainability and what they want to achieve. I would go to the sustainability manager for Philippa K, for example, or maybe listening to Donnell Wellington about the challenges in the watch industry.
Great. Check out hejaframtiden.se for more information about this podcast. Follow us on social media, and thank you for listening.